Welcome to this week's edition of Yilungelo, Lakho. It's your right. SABC 1. Now, South Africa's struggling economy, forcing more and more people out of work, means that many families are battling to put food on the table. But a passion in farming could be the answer for stressed consumers trying to find a means to make a living. Well, hope may not be too distant away for aspiring, emerging and established farmers as well. The Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC, in partnership with the Department of Agriculture, established a fund aimed at getting many back to work. A 1 billion rand fund set up by the Department of Agriculture jointly with the IDC could just be what many may have been waiting for. Now, this fund aimed at helping emerging and established farmers is intended to improve the economy and breaking entry barriers to commercial farming. Our producer Papama Changana Dube visited one of the potential beneficiaries about 30 kilometers outside of Pretoria. Let's take a look.
Unomvula Mathebula ngumnini wale farma eSTERKSPRUIT ikilometha ezingama-27 ukusuka ePitoli. OkaMathebula ungomnye wabalimi abasakhasayo kweli abathintelwa yimiqobo eliqela kwezolimo. Mihlaleke okaMathebula utshitshana nesisixhobo sidala ukuvula le ndawo ehlala inkukhu zakhe nekumele ihlale ifudumele ukuze inkukhu zingabulawa yingqele.
Khona manje kusebusika ebusika kufana njengasehlobo ehlobo kunqonywana ngoba kuyashisa so immortality rate yakhona iba low khona manje iba phezulu nyana ngoba kuyabanda so that's why kufuneka ukuthi na kanjani umele ube na heating system so that mesifika zikhone ukufudumala sithole indawo lo sebenzela kuyo ifudumele.
Ukungabi nambane kwakhe kumnyanzelisa ukuba axhomekeke ekubaseni imbawula. Lo ngomnye wemicelimngeni eliqela ajamelene nayo neyenza ukuba kube nzima ukukhuphisana nabalimi asebephumelele.
Big companies la khona la ku industry la bathi mabafika ko la eplazini bathola ukuthi iplazi lami lisebenza ngemanual, everything imanual, so bathangeke baze angeke ba invest imali yabo kimi bangibona ukuthi angeke uma ngabe kuyenzeka inkukhu zabo ziyafa so ubani ozobabhadala ngoba already mina yonke into yami ngisebenzisa ngemanual, ngisebenzisa inkuni bafuna umuntu osebenzisa everything ibe automated so yangiblocka lento le yankosa ukuthi ngime sinawo amaplaza but there's no one who's willing to help us.
Kodwa lemiqobo ajongene nayo okaMathebula isenokuba yinto yembali njengoko abesebe lezolimo bebambisene nabe-Industrial Development Corporation beseke ingxowa-mali eyibhiliyoni zeerandi ukukhawulelana nabalimi abasakhasayo kwanabo basathwele nzima njengoMathebula.
Uma ngabe ufuna kuba i-commercial you need to be more advanced, at least amahoko wakho abonakale, nida ifunding ebonakalako kuze ukuthi nami ngikhuphuke ngikwazi kuba ku-commercial. Ngacala nje ngoku namahoko wami, first priority amahoko wami.
Injongo yokusekwa kwalenkxasomali kukukhawulelana neengxaki zemali abalimi abantsundu abajongene nazo kwanokususa imiqobo ebathintela ukuba bathathe inxaxheba kwezolimo. Ikwajonge nokudala amathuba emisebenzi ingakumbi uninzi luthwaxekile ngulo bhubhane we-COVID-19. Le nkxasomali karhulumente kulindeleke ukuba ivulele abo banomdla kwezolimo incede abo basasokolayo iphuhlise noqoqosho lweli. Umdla ke kuninzi iyakuba yinkqubo ekumele ilandelwe khona ukuze umntu axhamle kule ngxowa-mali. Kwilungelo lakho ndinguPhaphama Changana Dube.
Ukhuluma nathi kabanti ke namhlanje leli hlelo ke lokusita ke balimi bakuleli kasesimukele Kgampi Bapela lokhulumela ke Industrial Development Corporation siphinde sibe na Dr. Sifiso Ntombela yena ke ubuya National Agricultural Marketing Council. Gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you. Esanimukela hlelweni sanibonani. Dr. Ntombela angiqale ngawe babe siyakumukela hlelweni.
Ngibingelele baba, ngibingelele nababukeli bakho sanibonani.
Siyabonga kakhulu ke it's very obvious ukuthi ke itekulima noma ke agriculture is a very great contributor to the country's economy. Ukuthi ke what are your thoughts on this?
Kunjalo mfethu, and ezolimo is one of those important sectors ezibaluleke kakhulu kumnotho waseMzantsi Afrika. Azibalulekile nje kakhulu emnothweni, but usiyazi kahle kakhulu ukuthi the primary role agriculture ukuthi ikwazi ukuthi lethe ukudla kubo bonke abantu abakhona, ngoba sazi ukuthi sina almost 50 million people abadependent kuleyo ngemboni isiba ukuthi kube ne-access ekudleni. Over and above that, siyazi ukuthi yona sector futhi enkulu kakhulu le eyenza isiqinisekiso sokuthi iyasiza because it's export orientated. So iyakwazi ukuthi sikwazi ukuthi sibe nama export earnings esiza kakhulu kuma balance sheet nakwi fiscal strengthening of the country. But sazi kahle kakhulu futhi ukuthi ke even though yona i-agriculture isabaleka ngako isenazo ke ingqinamba enazo ekakhulukazi kulabo balimi abasafufusakho ukuthi bekwazi ukuthi nabo bebambe iqhaza elikhulu ukwenza sure ukuthi na ukudla kubleka eSouth Africa. Kodwa esikwazi kahle umhlophe ukuthi yona sector ebalulekile ukuze i-economy develop to the next stages.
Now buka ke Dr. Ntombela ukuthi ke most South Africans, do they have the mental mindset yakungenela ke tekulima noma ke agriculture ekutheni batiphilise bona?
Ngiyacabanga ukuthi banayo i-mindset. Mhlambe umbuzo ufanele ukuthi na is there enough awareness or the educational campaign ukuze bonke abantu eMzantsi Afrika bekubone ukubaluleka kwezolimo. Uphinde futhi mangawuqhubeza lo mbuzo wakho ngithi is there enough support ukuthi nalabo abanothando nesifiso sokungena kulo emboni bayakwazi ukuthi bexhaseke. Ngiyacabanga lezo ngqinamba ezinye ke isanda kwenzeka. Uma sibuka nje even most of the young South African ngoba senyangene nje abantu abasha ku June, iningi labo uma sibuka ezikoleni eziningi i-agriculture kusiyona enye yama subject enekusasa eliphezulu ukuthi abafundi mabeqhubha bekwazi ukuthi beye kuyona mabe emakolishini. Isikhathi esiningi uma uhlangana nabafundi uyayuzwe kuthiwa no ngigcine ngingena kwezolimo ngoba angikwazanga ukungena kwi-choice yami yokuqala. Leyo ke enye into okufanele kungathi ingashintshakala uma siqhubeka siya phambili. Phezu kwakho lonke kunalabo sebeyitholile ukuthola ukufunda, nalabo asebefuna futhi ukuthi mhlawumbe babe nenhlanhla bathola ngisho indlela bethola umhlaba ukuthi beqale befunda ngoba sazi i-agriculture it's all about land. Uthola ukuthi uxhaso abalitholi ngandlela eyanekelekile ukuze bekwazi beqhubeka. So lokho ezinye zezinselela eziphoseleke kuhulumende wethu ukuthi na how does he come up with some of the programs that will ensure that those that have interest and love can really participate and do better in the sector. And we're hoping that during the course of today we'll be able to get into some of those challenges and some of those programs are designed ukuthi eshintshala lawo challenges.
Yeah, and I guess that's the purpose of this discussion namhla ke Dr. Ntombela lokuthi into lenkulu kakhulu okubalekile nje kumhlaba, the land. Noma ngabe umuntu angaba nayo le idea ukuthi ufuna kulima maqabishi, spinach nanani kepha nje utawolima kuphi. Number 2, the farming implements, the resources, the capacitation of potential farmers and the emerging farmers. Kuthi ke leyo singayibuka kanjani leyo?
Uphinde futhi ungayikhohlwa nemarket egcineni kwakho konke.
Nemarket, yes.
Yeah, and uzibeke kahle kakhulu lapha umsakazi wami because umhlaba it's a cornerstone, it's a backbone of agricultural production. And the agricultural economy has even advanced much stronger in indlela zobuchwepheshe esekudingakalayo ukuthi ukwazi ukuthi ufame ngendlela eyisimanje manje idinga a very clear access kwi-credit. Sizokhumbula futhi ukuthi lezo zinto ezinye zento ukuthi makwenzeka ama-reforms uma nje ngingakubuyisela emuva kancane nombukeli wakhe emakhaya ngesikhathi kwenziwa ama-reforms in 1996 and 1997 ukuthi i-shift ama-agriculture from the agricultural system in Mzansi ebe aligned to the global communities as South Africa was going back into the global community. We did not put a lot of emphasis, especially in creating sustainable support systems. Kakhulukazi kuma emerging farmers, even nama commercial farmers asaqhubekayo adlala indima ebaluleke kakhulu they are not as much exposed into those support subsidies that were there. First of all, during those reforms, South Africa demolished what we used to call Agricultural Credit Board, which was an institution that will provide funding kulawo farmer asafufusayo, kulawo farm that were considered credit unworthy. We also removed the agricultural marketing boards, which were actually institutions that were providing the system of access into markets. But similarly, all form of subsidies into the to the farmers were removed. And these were necessary and very good reforms on their own. But the problem is that as Gwazango the new ones that are aligning to the proper WTO guidelines as South Africa is part of that. Ensuring that umuntu une access to land, but over and above land, une access to water reform so that you can put that land into irrigation scheme. But ensure now how do you continue to keep up with our agricultural colleges and the new technologies in those agricultural colleges. As you see that most of them are struggling, maybe 2 or 3 are still functioning to their level of pre-1996, but most of them are struggling today. But even our researching capacity, if you're looking at our ARC, we have sort of deteriorated in terms of providing some of the necessary skills and the technologies that are required at an affordable rate. But even if you're looking at the credit market, it remains a challenge. So izo zonke izinto is becoming very difficult ukuthi ubone umfama kakhulukazi abafama abasafufusayo ukuthi bengene kwezolimo bekwazi ukuthi beqhubeke befama ngendlela ekhulu. Okugcina engakubaluleka kakhulu ukuthi na siyakwazi kahle mhlophe while South Africa yelinye lamazwe kakhulukazi eAfrica yonkana phambili kakhulu ukuthi ifame in a modernized way. But sokhumbula ukuthi even post 1994 you had a large vast of land under rural areas lezi indawo kwangama independent state which were really overseen in terms of investment in enabling infrastructure. And not much have changed if you go to those areas. And those are the areas as in potential if we're really to push agriculture into the next growth strategy going forward.
Dr. Ntombela, thank you so much for opening our eyes to these issues in greater detail with our conversation. Now, Kgampi, Dr. Ntombela, laying the groundwork to this discussion, a very, very important discussion. And we've seen in the insert 2 dynamic women farmers lamenting the kind of problems and challenges that they've been faced with as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic. And I suppose then it leads to the next point about the funding that has been offered by the IDC. Please take us into greater detail about what this funding is all about and who gets to benefit from it.
Thanks very much, Dumela. I think we were sitting with a challenge, and I think Dr. Ntombela has alluded to that it becomes a challenge when you're funding businesses, especially agriculture. It is prudent that you make sure that there is enough equity in the business, because the returns in agriculture are not that great, although the role of agriculture is very great, I mean, in terms of food security and all that. But not everyone, especially the emerging farmers or smallholder farmers, have that necessary equity. And as a funder, we then approached various parties, government included, to say, how best can we intervene? One of the areas was to make sure that we able to secure that equity, be it in a form of part grant funding that will then blend with commercial funding, or if it's not a grant, but maybe more concessionary type funding, so that we can be able to unleash this potential. We've heard that from the Minister of Agriculture talking about something like 700,000 hectares that are to be returned, but these hectares will not necessarily make any impact if we're not going to make sure that we keep them in production, and the ones that are not in production, we get them into production. And even before that happens, it is estimated that there is over 150,000 hectares that is either underutilized or lying fallow. And this is arable land with unique microclimates where we can produce some of these export-oriented, long-term, high-value crops. But while land is also an issue, there's opportunities, especially in provinces like Gauteng, where there isn't much land, but things like poultry, as you've been interviewing one lady in the inset, you don't really need vast tracts of land, and you don't have to have an arable land, but you can, because it's more of an intensive production. So the fund is aimed at first looking at those crops that are more export oriented, that we can be able to earn that foreign currency, but also for the farmers themselves, obviously, to earn a living. And to, in a way, maybe say, making agriculture even more fashionable, but also taking advantage of, we have a comparative advantage as compared to the other countries, especially our South American counterparts, who are fierce competitors in the marketplace. Because our country's got different unique climates. When you range, say, from Limpopo, you could be producing, if it's citrus, coming at a particular time during the year, and maybe somewhere in the Eastern Cape, you could be coming 3 weeks or so later. So that gives us an opportunity in the marketplace, because we're not going to be flooding the market. So if you are early, the margins are higher. If you are late in the season, you're also able to make something. Okay. So the whole idea is really to make sure that we can be able to make to increase the capacity in the agricultural space. The question I know is who benefits and what sort of sectors are we looking at? We're looking at a wide range of subsectors within agriculture.
Let's talk about the criteria after this break, Kgampi, because we need to take a commercial break. I'll definitely get back to you in a moment. So please hold your thought there. Asibambe lapho ke bekunene namhla ke sisishelele ngasetitolo namhla ke sikhuluma ke ngetekulima nekuthi ke if you are an aspiring farmer or you are an emerging farmer, this is the show for you. You definitely need to watch. Leli ke Yilungelo lakho asisishwi ngasetmarket. Sikwamukela futhi mbukele icingo nje sesivuliwe ukuthi nawe ke ungaba ingcenye lenkulumo yethu. Share icingo ke ku-011-714-6918 noma ke 011-714-6919. Ungasithumela futhi ne-email ku-consumer@sabc.co.za. Ungaphinda uhlanganele nathi ke ku-Facebook. Namhla ke bekunene sikhuluma ke nge-agriculture ke tekulima ke i-IDC, i-Industrial Development Corporation, seyikhiphe ke sikhwama sekuthi ke labo ke labahlosile ke ukuthi babe balimi, the aspiring farmers, nangabe ke umlimi vele sovele uqalile kepha ke emandla amafishane kuthi ke lehlelo ke namhla litawukhuluma ngawe. Sina Kgampi Bapela ulapha ke Industrial Development Corporation, siphinde sibe na Dr. Sifiso Ntombela from the National Agricultural Marketing Council to give us a general overview of the agricultural sector here in South Africa. Now, Kgampi, let's now pick up on the conversation. Before we went to the ad break, you say that you're only funding crops that are export ready. So I suppose it'll pose a bit of a problem, because if you only focus on the exports, what about those farmers who do it for subsistence? I mean, for their livelihoods and as well as for sale to the local market?
Thanks. I think maybe let me just first correct that. Yes, it is important, obviously, as a country that we need to, in focusing on high-value crops that are mostly export-oriented. It doesn't mean that we're not providing for South Africa itself. I mean, if we're talking citrus, if we're talking stone fruit, apples, and all that, we still consume those in South Africa, but the bulk of it we're exporting, and in doing that, it keeps our agricultural sector sustainable and creating all those jobs as well. Maybe let me first deal with the criteria that we're using, then I will then answer the question as to where do those who do not qualify go, because obviously as an organization or as a development bank, so to say, we cannot be able to necessarily cater for everyone, but there are, government has come up with systems, there are other sister institutions that are able to cater for that. So the criteria for this fund is that the minimum shareholding has to be 60% black. It has to be, the farmer has to be participating in particular sectors. One, horticulture, but also poultry, piggeries, even red meat industry. But in all this, there is what we call minimum viable units. You hear from time to time when people talk about emerging farmer, what comes into mind? Immediately there is assumption that you're saying black. And that's not what we want to see going forward. We're saying we can change that. A black person or a black farmer can be a commercial farmer. So we then engage in that industry and various commodity groupings and start asking questions. What will make a farmer commercial in your sector? For example, with poultry farmers who are into it, who are contracted, they're producing broilers. The minimum viable unit as per industry is said to be 200,000 beds per cycle. So 200,000 chickens per cycle. And then for layers, 50,000. For piggeries, 300 sows. Then you have for various horticultural crops that they also have differing minimum viable units. Why that is important to us is to make sure that we're not just finding people for subsistence purpose. We want them to emerge. They cannot just remain emerging. We want them to be able to break that barrier, be able to upscale them, that they can now transition and become commercial farmers. But because we know that we not everyone will be catered in this space, there are other institutions. For example, there is SIFA, Small Enterprise Finance Agency, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the IDC. That their funding will range from say 50,000 to up to 15 million rand, while IDC will even go much bigger.
Okay, and I suppose there'll be plenty more calls coming in and so many questions that our viewers probably have. One of them, I suppose, would be whether the IDC fund will fund sectors that are in support of the farmers themselves, or in short, do you only fund mainstream agriculture or the sectors that are in a way supporting the agricultural sector? For instance, if I've got a farm or a piece of land and which is, and I've got grass, for instance, and then I collect the grass as hay that will be supplied to the cattle farmers. So would I be in a position to be, to benefit from this fund?
No, not necessarily, but there will be other financial institutions that will be supportive of that. What I also need to mention is that you could also maybe talk about somebody who is producing or manufacturing fertilizer. Will they be catered for? Not in this fund, but we have other units within IDC, for example, the chemical unit that deals exactly with that.
Okay.
We are very sector-focused financier, so they could still be funded, but not necessarily through this fund. And this is not, we're having, IDC manages a range of other funds, some coming from government departments, some coming from partners, even international development finance institutions. So this is just one part of many other funds that we're managing.
Okay.
But the importance of this one is basically allowing everyone can be able to participate, but also not only just get by, but be able to be upscaled and reach that level where they can also be commercial and participate in the mainstream of the economy.
All right, let's take our first call. As MXOLISI ulapha ke STERKSPRUIT. Sakumudwe hlene sawubona.
Yebo, sawubona baba.
Yebo, khuluma nathi baba.
Tata nginombuzo apha. Last year sa-apply msikazi baba. Kwavulwa ama-applications sa-apply. Then uku-apply kwethu sa-provide into urhulumente beyithi masi-provide. Kodwa into eyenzeka bathi basenda ama-message again bathi we not reach the criteria. So ngifuna ukuqonda ukuthi ngaba kuna-corruption eyenzekayo kwezinto ezi.
Uthi na apply kuphi baba?
Apply kuhulumende.
Nguyiphi le fund le apply kuyo?
Kule ezolimo.
Okay, so nabanitshela ukuthi ani-meet criteria, ngiphi le criteria bebakhuluma ngayo?
Ukuthi uprovide lezinto babezifuna like nda provide into ezemfuyo yabona. Ngande apply lepo imfuyo yabo.
Okay, Mxolisi ke namhla ke sikhuluma ngale fund, isaseyisha le fund. It's actually very new, spearheaded by the IDC.
Ukuthi tata kanti ndiyeva. Uma ngabe ingaphumelela bangakwazi ukuyilandelela uma ngabe iyaphumelela lento.
Angeva kahle ukuthi bangakhona kulandzelela ini ke?
Ukuthi izama application bangakhona ukuwalandelela ukuthi yahamba kahle.
Okay, Mxolisi siyabonga kakhulu ke. Siyathemba ukuthi ke you will keep on watching ngoba ke tini intetho ke tikhona ke titawuphendula lo mbuto loyo. Mbukele asesishele ngasetolo. Please don't go away. Leli lungelo lakho. Welcome back. Khumbula ukuthi ingqondo tethu ketivuliwe ukuthi ke naba ungaba ke ingcenye leli hlelo. These are the participation lines on your screens right now. You can call us on 011-714-6018 noma ke 011-714-6919. Namhla ke sikhuluma ke ngesikhwama ke lesikhishwe i-IDC, Industrial Development Corporation. If you are an aspiring farmer or you are an emerging farmer or you are already an established farmer, ukuthi ke ingabe lesikhwama lesi sabubani nekuseke bobani ke kumele ukuthi bakuthole ke lusito kuleso sikhwama leso. Now Mr. Bapela, let's pick up on this conversation. Earlier on we had a caller, Mxolisi, said that he's been applying through the Department of Agriculture several times, but they've been declined because they ostensibly do not meet certain criteria. So MXOLISI is now asking, can these people who've been rejected by the department be accommodated in this new fund by the IDC?
Okay, there are, I think, let's distinguish maybe these things. There are a number of programs that are run by the department. And I think also even to your earlier question, where most of the farmers that may not necessarily qualify under this particular fund can be assisted. I mean, this ranging from a farmer who makes a turnover of less than R1 million to there is all that classification that the department is using. So, but I don't want to be talking about what the department is doing because I'm not too familiar with the programs, but with the details. But I know that they do have such programs. With this particular fund, the criteria is very clear. It is available on our website. Even the application or the inquiries can be made online. And within 48 hours, an official will get back to you, maybe to ask for details of your inquiry if you've not uploaded any business plan. I must also state that while the billion rand is the money that's coming from the department that will be in the form of a grant, it cannot be accessed on its own. It has to be blended with IDC money, meaning that there will be a portion that will be grant and a portion that will be a loan. Mm-hmm. And the criteria there also is that it will be around 40% to 60%. With a minimum of R1 million and a maximum of a 50 million rand per project. So in reality, the amount that it's likely to end up being invested, we're looking at this partnership to facilitate investment in the agricultural space to close to R1 billion can be able to attract close to 2.5 billion rand. So you're looking at a total funding that can be injected in the agricultural sector of 3.5 billion. This is obviously over and above the normal funding that IDC is doing in the agricultural space.
Yeah, because it does appear that R1 billion may be too small if you're going on the national scale, because so many farmers may be interested in this. Is there a possibility that this fund may be increased in the future?
Yes, actually, the response has been overwhelming. But what it has done I think is a good problem to have, where we've received high quality pipeline. Of course, with that also you are attracting the not so good ones, because everyone, there is a challenge obviously in terms of funding in general in particularly in agriculture. So you will have people trying their luck even if they know that they're not necessarily qualifying. So yes, we are in discussion with the department to see if the quantums cannot be increased. Okay. As we speak, I mean the fund is already oversubscribed, but the positive message we received from the department is that there will be an increase, a further injection. However, we at this stage discussions are still going on. We don't know by how much. And the billion, maybe I also need to emphasize that the billion rand is over a period of 5 years. So it means there's only 200 million rand, which also, to your point, that if you look at nationally, that may not be sufficient. But we try and leverage also on other funds that we are managing. But to answer you, yes, there is a possibility, high possibility that there will be an increase in the injection.
Okay. Dr. Ntombela, let me also bring you into this conversation. Yini ke kumele ukuthi ngikubuke kuze ukuthi ke ngidecide ukuthi ngifuna kulima ini. Ndangabe ke sengidecide ukuthi ngifuna kulima amaklabishi nespinach. What is it that I need to factor in for me to start making an application for funding? Do I have to consider the location, for instance, or the climatic or the weather conditions of that particular area?
Yebo mntababa, ngiyacabanga ukuthi ziningi izinto okufanele uqale uyibuke. Okuningi kakhulu kufanele uqale ubuke ukuthi iyona yiphi imakethe ofuna ukuyisupplya. So lokho kuye ngama seasonality, because imakethe iyona edetermine ukuthi uzotshala ini, uyitshale kanjani, because imakethe iyona futhi ekutshela ukuthi na imaphi ama standard okufanele uwalandele ukuze ukwazi ukuthi uyisupply lo market ngendlela eqondile. Ngifuna ukuthi ngichaze kanjena futhi mntakababa le ndaba yokuthi na ekuselecteni ukuthi utshala ini ukuze uthole yiphi fund. Kubalekile futhi ukuthi siqale sibuke umnotho wezolimo eMzansi in its entirety. If ngizongivumela nje mntakababa ngunikeze couple of numbers. uMzansi Africa very good ngezolimo ukukhiqiza into ezifana nenyama noboya, especially kulama provinces njengo Free State nabo Eastern Cape abagood ngama sheep and lamb. So most of our farmers akulezo ndawo zowabona ukuthi because ne climate ne environment iyaye futhi ibakhuthaza ngoba sazi ukuthi ezolimo ziphinde zincike kakhulu ukuthi na iclimate lapho producer khona nomhlaba wakho ama soil type avumela uziphi itshala ekhona.
Okay.
So mawubuka futhi ke kakhulukazi ama province njengabo Northern Cape no Western Cape ayaqala ke lawo ebemahle kakhulu uma ukuthi abalimi bafuna ukukhiqiza into njengezithelo ama citrus nama deciduous and table grapes, while amanye ama provinces ayibuka ezinye eseyiqhamuka ke ezinje ama academia nuts. So yibo wonke ama opportunities lana abalimi abangakwazi ukuthi beyikhethele wona. Kunomehluko phakathi kwalezo broadly ngayibeka nje kabili. Kunomehluko phakathi kwalawo ma commodities. Umzwile umntakababa lapha Mr. Kgampi ekhuluma ngama export orientated products.
Yes.
So ilawo ma product lawo amahle kakhulu ekutheni ungakwazi uwathumele uhwebelane namazwe angaphandle njengama fruit ngoba ayakwazi ukuthi eqoqe kahle ama export earnings for you. But kunalama product are good in terms of ngabeka njengani aligned to what we call food security. Umubuka ibasket yokudla eMzansi Africa typically ukuthi yini ekhona lapho uzobona ukuthi abantu baseningizimu kakhulu because ufanele especially nutritious food basket a composition yama protein, carbohydrate ne starch. So uzobona lapho ukuthi izinto eziningi kakhulu ezibalekile izinto njengama vegetables like ama potato nabo tomatoes nama cabbages. So and also on proteins like especially low cost protein like ama poultry and then namanye kanjengama animal, and then those that are also essential for certain minerals like ama fruit nama vegetables. So kubalekile ukuthi sibe nama systems nama funding azokwazi ukuthi eqhuquzele wonke umlimi okhona ongakwazi ukuthi etshale lokudla ukuze sibe ne-nutritional food basket ekhona. Now Mntakababa, what I wanted to say is that umubuka eMzansi njengamanje we are very good, we are a net exporter of food, but in number is under Kisho state SA sibonile ukuthi agriculture iperform kahle kakhulu last year, even singaphansi kwencindezi, but zimbili izinto ezibaluleke kakhulu esifundile ngonyaka ophelile ngeagricultural economy. One, iCovid isifundisile ukubaluleka kwabantu kwe-small scale farming ne-subsistence farming. Almost 30% of our consumption and distribution of food through our fresh produce market goes through our traders and small farmers. And most of the time, ilaba bantu sithi masidizana lama program sikhulume ngaphezu kwabo sibashiye ngemuva. Esibili into esifundise kakhulu ngenombe iphume ngonyaka ophelile ku-agriculture is that we are constantly looking at a much more sophisticated food system where out of the 40,000 farming units, only 6.7, which you loosely translate to about 1,600 farming units that are responsible for 2/3 of our agricultural product. Isho ukuthini le nto Mntakababa? Isho ukuthi ukudla kwethu sekuproducewa abantu abancane kakhulu, imbidlana nje yabantu. Iningi labantu lingaphandle ekuthini likwazi ukuthi lidlale indima eproducing ukudla. Lokho kuyingozi kakhulu because ku-increase i-risk ye-excess yokudla kwethu. Yini izinto okufanele zenziwe kakhulukazi lapho? Ngifuna ukuthi kunama-signs uhulumende esebenzisana nama-agents akhe njengayo IDC aseqala ukubuyisa ithemba. Siyazi ukuthi there was what we call a missing middle class kind of farmers, which I think le fund ka 1 billion uhulumende national no IDC abaqhamuke nayo. It's a very important and a good initiative because they are catering for those farmers that wants to graduate from the emerging level into a commercial level. Ngoba uzwile nje Mntakababa from the IDC uhambe explain ama criteria, but this fund it still leave behind millions of farmers that needs to be catered for. As we know, we have over 2.3 million household and emerging farmers which are catered.
Ntombela ngicela sishiye lapho ngidawufuna ukuthi please hold that thought. Ngidawucela ukuthi siqhubeke emva kwaleli khefu. Let's go take another commercial break hlana nathi ke mbukeli ungasinyakatha. Asinabukele futhi ke bantu abakethu ke ehlelweni lethu ilungelo lakho. Our participation lines are still open. You can call us on 0117146918 noma ke 0117146919. You can drop your thoughts and your emails to consumer@sabc.co.za. Ungaphinda uthole futhi na Facebook. Let's take our next caller. Sinabheki ulapha ke ENTUZUMA eNatal. Sakumolo ehlelweni sawubona.
Yeah, well, njani futhi?
Siyaphila khuluma nathi baba.
Oh, lapho ikhona indawo impela nje abantu bangasekho abanendawo nje and futhi abantu abayimisela inkinga nje yinsiza kusebenza into engekho. So ke nokuthi nje thina sivele sitshale noma yini endaweni singazi ukuthi yini ilungele ukuthi ingamila kuleyo ndawo ibe right. So ngicela ukubuza ukuthi ukwazi kanjani ukuthi indawo yini ilungele ukuthi ungayitshala iphumelele.
Okay, good question. Siyabonga kakhulu ubheke usishayela bheke kulapha ke ENTUZUMA. All right, now Dr. Ntombela, ngiyathemba umvile ke bheke ukuthi, and I suppose it ties into the last point that you made about what crop to grow where. Ngoba ke yena bheke uthi ke ukhona umhlaba banawo ekhaya kubo kepha ke abathi ukuthi kumele batshale ini. So ngam-advisor bheke.
Yes, sibonge lapho umbuzo kaBheki. Ngiyacabanga ngoba ethu lapha ENTUZUMA phansi lapha kwelikabanana i-agriculture ikhona i-provincial agriculture ilapha na Pietermaritzburg, but kodwa futhi ama-office ka-agriculture khona kuwo wonke ama-district akhona laphana eKwaZulu-Natal. Into engamcebisa yona ukuthi uma ngakwazi ukuthi either eye eSedara kwi-college laphana eMaritzburg uzokwazi ukuthi ethole what they call ama-crop calendar, okuyilona i-calendar likusho ukuthi uma usendaweni ewukuthi iKwaZulu-Natal iyonkana bethathe ukubona ukuthi na isimo sezulu lapho endaweni okhona, islope yendawo okhona, nanokusondelana kwemarket lapho khona bekuchazisela ukuthi na season ukuthi isebusika noma isehlobo yiphi indawo engayitshala leyo. phe kwalokho futhi maya kulawo ma-office akhona whether kwi-district noma kwi-college noma department yoqobo engakwazi ukuphinde futhi ethole iy'ndlela ey'khona ukuthi uma senawo lo mhlaba engathola uxhaseko olunjani njengokuthi etest ukuthi umhlaba wakhe uyiquality enjani ukuze ekwazi mase efaka umanyolo otestekile futhi no safe ukuze ekhiqize ukudla okunempilo. So ngamkhuthaza ukuthi evakashele indawo enjengalezo ngoba deshilo nje umnumzana uHampa uthi over and above kule fund i-department iyona iqobo layo inamanye ama-program amanye abhekelelele abantu abatshala endaweni ezisemakhaya nalabo abasafufusayo abasanda kuqala njengama-program anjengo-CASP Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program namanye abhekelele ngqo nabantu abatshala endaweni zasemakhaya njengolima nolitsima fund which are almost 100% grant and ayakwazi ukutholakala amafomu akhona ema-office asondelene nawo kwimkhandlo yonke isifundazwe sakaZulu.
Na Dr. Ntombela phambilini ukhulume ngekuthi-ke basesebancane ke bantu lapha eNingizimu Afrika laba khona ukuba ngema-farmers noma ke labalima-ko and le nombolo yebantu-ke labangaphandle kwale food chain iseseyinkulu. Awucabange ukuthi still it goes back to the lack of resources ikakhulukade nje umhlaba ngoba I think it takes us to the discussion of supply and demand ukuthi there's a higher demand yet there's less supply.
Ngivumelana nawe kanjalo mntakababa ukuthi but I wouldn't really fully leave it only on the forces of supply and demand. Ngiyacabanga ukuthi kokunye kwakhona fanele siqale sibuke indlela ade senza ngakhona and kokunye siqale sini kwamakhwapha ukuthi lezi systems akhona ingabe addressa ama challenges esinawo at the grassroots level or not. And mhlambe ingabe because sineminyaka u20 sibuke ukuthi senza kanjani izinto and we have not moved that much from what we were in 1996. So indlela engisho and some of it I must give credit ukuthi abafowethu abaphansi kohulumeni nabasebenzisana nako kuma-industries banama-program aseqala ukuthi address these things. If ngayisummarize nje mntakababa engicabanga ukuthi ngokwami okufanele siyi-addresse immediately ukuze sikwazi ukumove uhlelo lokulethwa kwento zomhlaba luqhubeke and those 700,000 hectares that ungqongqoshe wezwe lonke aseqalile thina aliqhubeke. Ngicabanga ukuthi it must move even beyond just commercial land but also looking at how do you increase support to those that already have access to communal land so that you expand agricultural production. But doing so you must make sure ukuthi ukwenza with water reforms siyakwazi ukuthi umhlaba lomningi obusubuyele kubantu awubuyelanga namalungelo ukuthi bebe namanzi so banomhlaba but abanawo ama water license ukuthi lokho kuyabacindezela because abakwazi ukuqhubeka. Okwesibili there is a need ukuthi kuqalwe manje kwenze ukuthi na how do you ensure ama small scale farmers nama intermediate farmers are having access into the market, not only just your retailers and supermarket but also the revival of the national fresh produce market. Siyazi ukuthi sina 21 national fresh produce market and the state of the operation of those fresh produce markets are not at the level that is desirable.
Okay. Dr. Ntombela, you keep on saying all the right things. Please let's leave it there and please hold thought stop this but let's take a last commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome to our very final segment right here on the show. IDC noma Industrial Development Corporation lesikhicelo ukuthi na ungabe uya an aspiring farmer noma ke uvele umlimi ukuthi ke lesikhwama lesi ngesakho. Now Dr. Ntombela singakaligqogqothe uhlelo sicela ukuthi kusithiphise noma ke usiluleke ukuthi yini lekumele ukuthi sikwende yile kumele siqale bange for all the farmers that are watching right now.
Engakululeka nje very quickly mntakababa all the farmers that are watching that now uthi na kubalekile ukuthi besondelana nezikhundla lapha bengakwazi ukuthi bethole khona information. Luningi usizo abangalithola and ngiyacabanga ukuthi mabengavakashela emahhovisini kuma district wonke lapha basondelana nakhona labo abakwazi ukuthi bengene esikhathini samanje sekunama cellphone nazo zonke izinto ezikhona bengene nama website ukuze belithole lolu usizo olukhona befonele kuma office ahlukahlukene. Engakusho ukuthi agriculture yenye izimboni ezisabaleka kakhulu enamathuba amaningi ukuthi abafama bengakwazi ukuthi bengene bekhuculula indawo zasemakhaya bekwazi ukuthi futhi bekhiqize amathuba omsebenzi. But enye futhi ekhona ukuthi nama programs over ngoba sikhuluma nje kakhulu namhlanje le IDC kunamanye ama programs aranywa ngama provinces, kunama programs aranywa nangama industries, kunama commodity associations, which are the instruments that ama farmers bengakwazi ukuvakashela mntaka.
Dr. Ntombela, siyabonga kakhulu ukusishayela ke. Now Kgampi, just before I let you go, what are your closing comments with regards to who can apply? Do we have to apply as individuals or as groups? And what is it that we need to bring forth to start that application process?
Yeah, thanks. You will need a business plan. Basically, I know when we're talking business plan, people start getting worried. For us, it's not about the glossiness of the paper that you're going to be putting together. It's exactly just being straightforward as to what is it that you want to do. Who are you? What are you doing currently? What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? The issues of markets, where do you hope to sell your product? Yeah, and you can apply online as well, or at least inquire online. We will get back to you.
What are those details?
Thing that I thought that,
what are those details? You mentioned applying online. What are those details?
www.idc.co.za.
Okay.
Then you go to the Agro Processing and Agriculture, SPU. You will find an application. It's not really a form, but yeah, for basic information and where you can also ask questions.
Okay, Mr. Kgampi Bapela from the Industrial Development Corporation, thank you so much for joining us. Now we get Dr. Sifiso Ntombela from the National Agricultural Marketing Council. We do appreciate your time. Thanks to you two gentlemen for joining us. Ayike mbukele sesifika ke maphethelweni elihlelo lethu namhla. Ngithanza ukubonga ke tininti ethu namhla ngekuba nathi ke siphinde sibonga kanye nawe ngekusihlanganyela lapha ehlelweni Yilungelo lakho. Till next time then, goodbye from Johannesburg. Timpolompo, aungela, wimganwa.